Welcome to the Part Filipino Podcast. I'm your half Filipino host, Leland Fox. Now, here in the United States, October is Filipino American History Month. So cue some fireworks. So with that in mind, I thought it was interesting to learn about Filipino American History Month. How did it come to be? What's all involved? What should we be doing during this month? And since I'm the host of the Part Filipino Podcast, I can do whatever I want. And what I want to do is cover that. So here we go. Welcome to the Part Filipino Podcast, the podcast for people who aren't quite sure if they actually count as Filipino. My name is Leland Fox, and I'm half Filipino. I hope you'll join me as I explore what it means to be part Filipino. So I want to talk a little bit about how the Filipino American History Month came to be. There's an organization called the Filipino American National History Society. It started in Seattle, which is where I live. They go by FANHS, F-A-N-H-S, Filipino American National History Society. In 1991, FANHS wrote a resolution declaring October as the national month to celebrate Filipino American history. And here's what they said. A resolution. October is Filipino American History Month. Whereas the Filipino American National Historical Society has declared the year 1988 to be the 225th anniversary of the permanent settlement of Filipinos in the continental United States, and had set into motion its year-long national observance in order to focus on the story of our nation's past from a new perspective by concentrating on the critically economic, cultural, social, and other notable contributions Filipino Americans had made in countless ways toward the development of United States history. And whereas efforts must continue to promote the study of Filipino American history and culture, so mandated in the mission statement of the Filipino American National Historical Society, because the role of Filipino Americans and those of other people of color have been overlooked in the writings, teachings, and learnings of United States history. Whereas it is imperative for Filipino American youths to have positive role models and to instill in them the importance of education, complemented with the richness of their ethnicity and the values of their legacy, and whereas the earliest documented proof of Filipino presence in the continental United States falls on October 1587. Now therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Filipino American National Historical Society establish Filipino American History Month, and that it be observed annually and nationally throughout the United States and its territories during the month of October, commencing in the year 1992, to mark the 405th anniversary of the presence of Filipinos in the continental United States, as a significant time to study the advancement of Filipino Americans in the history of the United States, as a favorable time of celebration, remembrance, reflection, and motivation, and as a relevant time to renew more efforts towards research, examination, and promulgation of Filipino American history and culture in order to provide an opportunity for all Americans to learn and appreciate more about Filipino Americans and their historic contributions to our nation, these United States of America. And signed by the Filipino, the FANHS trustees. So that was in 1991, and it took till 2009 for Filipino American National History Month to actually be formally declared an observatory month in the United States. I'm going to go to those hearings in Congress so you can see what people said in support of this commemoration. This is going to be a congressional hearing from November 2, 2009. You'll hear from Stephen Lynch, who is a Democrat in the House from Massachusetts, and then Patrick McHenry, who is a Republican from North Carolina. There's a little bit of sparring here that you'll see.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 780.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 780, resolution recognizing the celebration of Filipino American History Month in October.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, and the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and add any extraneous materials.
Without objection.
The reason that's important is because not everyone in Congress has arrived yet, and so it's giving people 5 days to into the written record, which will come into play because I'll read some additions to the testimony that was made at this hearing, or the statements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, I'm proud to present House Resolution 780 for consideration. This resolution recognizes the celebration of Filipino American History Month. House Resolution 780 was introduced on September 25, 2009 by my friend and colleague, Representative Bob Filner of California. In addition, this resolution was favorably reported out of the Oversight Committee by unanimous consent on October 29, 2009, and it enjoys the support of over 50 members of Congress. Moreover, the United States Senate passed a companion resolution to this legislation, Senate Resolution 298, by unanimous consent on October 1, 2009. Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 780 recognizes the celebration of Filipino American History Month as a unique opportunity to reflect upon the significant advancements of Filipino Americans in our country, as well as highlight the countless and diverse contributions of Filipino Americans to our national history and culture. This month-long celebration of Filipino American History Month was established in 1988 by the Filipino American National Historical Society to coincide with the 225th anniversary of the permanent settlement of Filipinos in the continental United States.
You'll note that that tidbit of information was actually added to what the fans put in their original declaration, which just mentioned the arrival of the first Filipino to California in 1987.
Notably, the Filipino American National Historic Society recognizes the year 1763 as the date of the first permanent Filipino settlement in the continental United States in the small fishing village of St. Malo, located in what is now St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana. These early settlers were formerly impressed sailors who escaped their oppressive conditions aboard Spanish galleons to establish a Filipino community in present-day Louisiana. The existence of this Filipino settlement was first reported in an 1883 Harper's Weekly article, which is widely believed to be the first article written about Filipino settlers in the United States. Today, according to the most recent United States Census Bureau estimate, the Filipino American population in the United States is nearly 3.1 million.
And that's now 4.5 million, according to 2022 census records,
making the Filipino American community the second largest Asian American group in the United States. And while the majority of our Filipino American population is concentrated in the states of California and Hawaii, Filipino contributions in the fields of public service, literature, business, science, and other areas have deeply enriched the lives of all Americans across our nation. Whether we recall the approximately 250,000 brave Filipino Americans that served during World War II, or our Filipino Americans deployed in the support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, our brave Filipino American servicemen and women have continually demonstrated their commitment to safeguarding our nation at great personal sacrifice. Accordingly, I would like to thank the sponsor of this resolution, my friend and colleague, Mr. Filner of California, for his great work as chairman of our Veterans Committee in ensuring that the economic stimulus legislation signed by President Obama earlier this year included a provision which required that our roughly 15,000 living Filipino veterans of World War II receive their full and deserved veterans benefits.
Now, there's some history to that because they were promised certain benefits, reneged, and so what he's saying now is there's just some history behind it.
The contributions of Filipino Americans to our national history are also evident in various other areas, including government and journalism. Notably, in 1994, Benjamin J. Cayetano became the first Filipino American to be elected a United States governor. And in 1997, Filipino American journalists Byron Acohido and Alex Tizon of the Seattle Times were the recipients of the Pulitzer Prizes. For their outstanding contributions to American journalism, Mr. Tizon, a native of Manila who came to the United States at the age of 4, was honored for a series of investigative articles about the widespread corruption and inequities in the federally sponsored housing program for Native Americans. Mr. Acohido received his Pulitzer for his reporting on the conditions of the American aerospace industry. Mr. Speaker, these are only a few of the many Filipino Americans whose achievements have greatly contributed to our national history. It is my hope that we can commemorate the contributions of all Filipino Americans through the passage of House Resolution 780 and by recognizing the significance of Filipino American History Month. I urge my colleagues to join us in supporting H 780, and I reserve the balance of our time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Again, this is Patrick McHenry, a House representative from North Carolina. And spoiler alert, I find this guy to be a little bit annoying. And I'll tell you why after we listen.
Thank you. Claiming the time.
The gentleman is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this legislation and the two other commemorating resolutions that the Oversight and Government Reform Committees put forth for consideration today on the House floor. Congress should be instead, though, I believe, focusing on high-priority initiatives. We're facing record unemployment, deficits that threaten to bankrupt this country, and a stimulus that's failing to create new jobs, yet this Congress is considering legislation that is not of that high priority for the American people. Congress should be considering legislation providing real and immediate economic solutions for the American people before naming and commemorating resolutions. But I do rise today, Mr. Speaker, in support of this resolution recognizing in celebration of Filipino American History Month, which was last month. We have all seen the countless ways in which these Filipino Americans have advanced our nation politically, economically, and culturally. Filipino Americans have significantly contributed to this country through arts, science, math, sports, commerce, and every other aspect of American culture since they first arrived in the 16th century. During World War II, over 200,000 Filipinos served in our U.S. military. They served in a variety of roles, such as the Philippine Scouts, the Philippine Commonwealth Army under U.S. command, and as guerrillas during the Japanese occupation of their islands.
That included my step-grandfather, who was a guerrilla fighter.
The history of our country has shown that Filipino Americans have strengthened the United States in all facets of our growth and development. Over 3 million Americans have traced their lineage to the Philippines, making them the second largest Asian American group in the United States. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I should say, I am pleased to support this resolution and reserve the balance of my time.
Now, I'm not a type of guy that's very good at getting on a rant and going on and on about things in a very flowery way. But this speech or this argument this guy gives is just really annoying to me, just because he's saying, oh, I support the Filipinos and I support this bill. But you know what? It's a waste of time. It's not important. It's not a high priority matter. So well, then just don't get up and say anything. You're just getting up to gripe that it's not a high priority matter. It's a waste of time. Well, then just stay in your seat and let it go on without raising an argument about it. It's like, to me, if I was someone was celebrating my birthday and someone comes into my house and is like, hey, I agree that we should celebrate your birthday and you're a special person and all that, but we've got so many other things to do besides this that are more important. We shouldn't be wasting our time on celebrating right now. We should be focusing on more important things. And I'd be like, well, then why did you come to my birthday? it just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, I think what he's trying to do is just show these really tough guy. He's a tough Republican coming to stick it to the Democrats. That's the only thing I could see that why he would be standing up to do this. But it just comes across to me as just kind of tactless and annoying. So now let's see how Mr. Lynch responds.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no further speakers, but I do want to point out that the reason we are here dealing with non-controversial items, commemorative items, in fact, is because the House is not scheduled to take up votes according to the calendar until 6:30. So we use this time to take up matters that are non-controversial, so that and we postpone votes so that members can come in during the day. They are flying in the process. So this is a regularly scheduled event here. This is when we take matters that, as this one, recognizing the importance of Filipino Americans. This is important to the Filipino American community. Very, very important and well deserved. And I think it is appropriate at a time like this that we take the time and give due recognition to their accomplishments and to being an important part of our nation's history and our culture. So I resent the fact that the inference has been made here that somehow we are using valuable time in the House when this particular time has been segmented so as not to interrupt with the important business to be taken up later in the week. We are taking this time now while members are flying in and we don't have a full quorum to address these commemorative issues. And we'll be in for the full week, so we'll have plenty of time to take those other matters up when the House is fully assembled. Again, I have no further speakers, but I will continue to reserve the balance of our time.
And I agree with Mr. Lynch. I do feel resentful that this McHenry guy is coming in and making a controversy out of a non-controversial bill. It's just like raining on the parade. It's totally unnecessary and unproductive for a guy who's so concerned about how time is being used.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would say in response to my colleague, I certainly appreciate the substance of this resolution is important. However, my colleague's characterization that this is only one day that we do suspensions here in the House is actually doesn't comport with the reality that we've faced over the last few weeks in the House of Representatives. On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of last week, the House of Representatives considered suspension items, which are non-controversial pieces of legislation, many of which are commemorating in nature, certainly important to the members and to the group they're commemorating. Absolutely, I agree. But we do have major work that we must contend with, and that was certainly the reason why I started this discussion by saying that we should be dealing with real major economic issues as a Congress and take those very seriously, and adding further that the stimulus has failed our people, and I think we should be working to fix that rather than simply commemorate or change the building names of different federal agencies and different governmental buildings. And I certainly appreciate my colleagues' comments, but we certainly have a different focus on that on that matter and that characterization. Although I would say that I share the same focus as my colleague from Massachusetts, and that is trying to do what's right for the American people. And I certainly appreciate his work in that regard as well. And I reserve the balance of my time.
So this dude actually doubles down on his argument that it's a waste of time to go over this non-confrontational bill. I don't think it's the flex that he probably thinks that it is. If anything, I'd just say it comes across as kind of torpy.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The point I was making is that this time right now, has been reserved for this purpose specifically, and this is a regular occasion during the week that we do this. Again, while we have extended a courtesy to members of the Republican side, members of the minority, so that they would know when votes are expected on the floor, and we have put that to a time certain. And the reason that we are dealing with ceremonial matters, commemorative matters here, is because members are not all in the District of Columbia right now. They're not all in Washington. They are traveling here, and this is a matter of courtesy, a courtesy extended to the minority members, so that when matters of contest and of dispute might arise, they would be here in full numbers, having the full opportunity to debate those matters. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of our time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 780? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended and the resolution is agreed to.
So there you have it. That's how the Filipino American History Month was created through the House. And it was a non-controversial bill where one person somehow found it a good opportunity to leave a little rain cloud. And as mentioned in the discussion, they did leave the bill open for a few days so additional people could comment if they wanted. And Bob Filner of California, Al Green of Texas, and Madeline Bordallo, representative on behalf of Guam, all provided statements in support of the bill. So now that we've kind of gone over how this came into being, I do actually want to read the bill that creates the Filipino American History Month. Because I actually haven't even read it. I'll be reading it live right now. Whereas the earliest documented Filipino presence in the continental United States was on October 18, 1587, when the first Luzones Indios set foot in Morro Bay, California, aboard the Manila-built galleon ship Nuestra Senora de Esperanza. Whereas the Filipino American National Historical Society recognizes the year 1763 as the date of the first permanent Filipino settlement in the United States in St. Malo, Louisiana, which set in motion the focus of the story of our nation's past from a new perspective by concentrating on the economic, cultural, social, and other notable contributions that Filipino Americans have made in countless ways towards the development of the history of the United States. Whereas the Filipino American community is the second largest Asian American group in the United States, with a population of approximately 3.1 million people, which is now 4.5. Whereas Filipino American servicemen and servicewomen have a long-standing history in the armed forces from the Civil War to the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, including the 25,000 Filipinos who fought under the United States flag during World War II to protect and defend this country. Whereas 9 Filipino Americans have received the Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest award for valor in action against an enemy force that can be bestowed upon an individual serving in the United States Armed Forces. Whereas Filipino Americans are an integral part of the United States healthcare system as nurses, doctors, and other medical professions. Whereas Filipino Americans have contributed greatly to the fine arts, music, dance, literature, business, journalism, education, science, technology, government, politics, fashion, and other fields in the United States that enrich the landscape of the country. Whereas efforts should continue to promote the study of Filipino American history and culture, as mandated in the mission statement of the Filipino American National Historical Society, because the roles of Filipino American and other people of color have been overlooked in the writing, teaching, and learning of United States history. Whereas it is imperative for Filipino American youth to have positive role models to instill in them the importance of education, complemented with the richness of their ethnicity and the value of their legacy. And whereas Filipino American History Month is celebrated during the month of October 2009, and every year since, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives resolve that the Senate, 1, recognizes the celebration of Filipino American History Month as a study of the advancement of Filipino Americans as a time of reflection and remembrance, and as a time to renew efforts toward the research and examination of history and culture in order to provide an opportunity for all people in the United States to learn and appreciate more about Filipino Americans and their historic contributions to the nation. 2. Urges the people of the United States to observe Filipino American History Month with appropriate programs and activities. And that's the resolution. The last thing I'll share here is that Fonz shares 5 suggestions on things we could do to commemorate Filipino American history. And so I'm just going to go over those 5 things. Number 1, read Filipino American studies books of the past and present. For example, 2022 marks the 25th anniversary of the edited text Filipino Americans' Transformation and Identity, edited by Maria P.P. Root, regarded as a foundational comprehensive text in Filipino American studies. Number 2, support arts and media that advance Filipino American studies, such as Lumpia with a Vengeance, which is a film, or Larry the Musical, which is a theater production. 3, learn about the history of the Luzones Indios who first set foot in California on October 18, 1587, as well as the historical oppression and resilience of indigenous peoples from the Philippines in both the motherland and in the United States. Number 4, conduct and share oral histories that highlight regional experiences of Filipino American history. And the 5th one is curate a panel of Filipino American artists to describe their contributions to the arts. And they also have a catch-all, which is, be creative and brainstorm ways to create a more sustainable impact for future generations of Filipino American communities. Now, the way I'm going to contribute to Filipino American History Month is, of course, by using my podcast. Obviously, today I spent my time learning about Filipino American History Month, where it came from, how it came to be recognized. In the next weeks, I'm going to cover my own family heritage. I'll be interviewing my mom about her story. And I'll also be covering some of these issues that came up today, like who were these 9 recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor? And I want to learn more about that settlement in Louisiana. There are a lot of interesting issues that came up that were cited as material issues for why Filipino American history should be commemorated. And I think they're all interesting to explore. And since the purpose of my podcast is to explore my Filipino heritage and the Filipino history, that's what I'm going to do. And I hope you'll be around to join me as we do so. If you have any ideas on things that we should cover, or if you'd like to share how you celebrate Filipino American history or any Filipino history, leave a comment below, and I hope I'll catch you on the next episode. See ya!